Chapter 1. The Truth According to Carouge. Starting from the battle that was raging between England and France during the Siege of Limoges on September 19, 1370, after the fall of the city, Carouge and the French soldiers were ordered by Prince Pierre to return and stop their military campaign. One memorable thing about the experience was that Carouge saved his colleague Jacques. 7 years later, in 1377, Prince Pierre was appointed as the newest leader of the knights and officers of the Argentan region in France. The ceremony took place at Belém Castle, which was entrusted to Carouge's father. Not long after, Jacques, who was Carouge's best friend, came to the castle. Jacques' arrival was none other than to take tribute. Jacques now has such high popularity that he managed to become Prince Pierre's confidant. Meanwhile, Carouge, who also has a lot of devotion to the kingdom, is still the same as other nobles. The condition of the world at that time was enveloped in a deadly plague, which also affected Carouge, where his wife and child died because of the plague. In addition, the Carouge's region was in a state of bankruptcy due to the plague as well. However, he still had to pay tribute to strengthen the French military, which was still shrouded in war. In 1380, war broke out in Normandy. Carouge joined the battle because his territory was in a state of bankruptcy and they needed money. After the fierce battle, the French finally managed to repulse the English, and the arrival of their soldiers was welcomed with joy by the local people. Engrossed in conversation, Carouge and his companion saw Robert. Robert had a bad reputation in France because he had allied twice with the British. However, he managed to escape and get forgiveness from the king. Robert came to Carouge and his companion and introduced a girl who was his daughter, Marguerite. During the introduction, Carouge fell in love with Marguerite. He happened to be a widower and was in need of a successor for his inheritance. He then married Marguerite by bequeathing her a large estate, including the castle. Not long after, the castle was given by Prince Pierre to Jacques in exchange for Jacques' services in reorganizing Prince Pierre's messy finances, even though the castle is a place that holds many memories of Marguerite as a child. Carouge, who felt that he wanted to do something for his wife, then went to Paris and asked the king directly for the return of the castle. However, his petition was rejected by the king, and they could no longer own the castle. While Carouge was in Paris, a letter arrived telling him about his father's death in Belém. Not waiting long, Carouge immediately went to Belém. Arriving there, he found his mother pensive. The mother then said that they would leave Belém because the castle was no longer on their side. Carouge was obviously surprised. Apparently, his actions to ask the king for a land dispute against Prince Pierre made him hated by Prince Pierre. Prince Pierre gave the castle to none other than Jacques. Carouge was even angrier and went to see the prince at his residence to ask for justice. But instead of justice, he received subtle taunts from Pierre and the surrounding nobles. A year had passed. Then Marguerite approached Carouge and said that his colleague Crespin would soon have a son, and they would organize a big event. To that, Carouge agreed, and they headed for Crespin's castle. Arriving at the castle, they met Jacques, who was also present at the event. At the celebration, Carouge and Jacques finally reconciled, despite the fact that they still held a grudge against each other. And in 1386, Carouge and the French army participated in facing the English in Scotland. After the war, Carouge returned to his castle and was honored as a knight. Not only that, he also arrived with a fever, but because he had to provide for his wife and family, he went to Paris to collect his war wages. Upon his return from Paris, his wife was seen looking pensive with her eyes glazed over with deep sadness. She soon said something very surprising. When Carouge went to Paris on the same day, his mother and all the servants left the palace as well. This left Marguerite alone in the palace. Not long after, she was raped by the very person Carouge hated, Jacques, and called a meeting at the church to tell everyone to spread the word, while he himself would press charges directly before the king. Arriving in Paris, Carouge did not hesitate to beg the king to punish Jacques for his actions. If Jacques denies his actions, then he will file a judicial duel, which is an ancient tradition to risk self-respect and God's decision about the truth. Then we enter chapter 2, where the truth is taken according to Jacques. At Prince Pierre's residence, Jacques and Pierre differed in their opinions about Carouge. Pierre thought Carouge's character was very bad. As a result of his decision, France lost the city of Limoges, and he dared to appeal for the castle. For this reason, Pierre forced Jacques to go ask for tribute to Carouge's residence. Not only that, Prince Pierre was also amazed at Jacques' prowess, who was not only great, he could also master many languages. For this reason, Pierre saw that Jacques could help his finances, which were deteriorating. Jacques was then assigned to meet Robert to force Robert to immediately pay his debts. After being in Robert's presence, Jacques apparently asked for an empty lot in the castle as a debt repayment, even though the lot was worth twice as much as Robert's debt. Sometime later, after the death of Carouge's father, Prince Pierre gave the castle to Jacques. Jacques actually refused because it would worsen the condition of his friendship with Carouge. On the day of the appointment, Jacques tried to explain to Carouge, who had thought that he was the one who persuaded the prince to drop his honor. But Carouge had been so enveloped in anger that Jacques could not do anything. Then on the day of the celebration of Crespin's first child, Jacques deliberately went to the place with the intention of seeing Carouge's wife's face. Because he had often heard about her majesty and beauty, after meeting Marguerite, Jacques was speechless. He was captivated by Marguerite's beauty. At night, he dreamt of having intercourse with Marguerite. This shows that he really couldn't focus, and his mind only saw Marguerite's shadow. Jacques is known to be very ambitious about his desires. If his wish is not granted, then his performance will be disrupted. Unable to take it anymore, he decided to go secretly to Marguerite's residence. Knowing that her husband, Carouge, and Carouge's mother were not at home. At midday, Jacques, accompanied by his bodyguard Adam, sneaked up to Marguerite's doorstep. While at Marguerite's house, it was Adam who lured Marguerite to open the door. To Marguerite's surprise, when she opened the door, Adam was not alone. He was with Jacques. Jacques immediately told Adam to come out, and he immediately confessed all his heart to Marguerite. Marguerite felt that this was ridiculous, because she has a husband, but Jacques continued to insist. Marguerite, feeling threatened, ran away. However, Marguerite could not avoid Jacques' lust. After having sex with Marguerite, Jacques did penance in a church, because after all, he was guilty of his actions. But not long after, Prince Pierre summoned him. Jacques was asked seriously whether he had really assaulted Marguerite or not, because the whole of France has known the news and made their reputation destroyed in the eyes of the people. Jacques then said that his actions were based on love. He was truly in love with Marguerite, and the intercourse they had committed was because they were in love. There was no coercion at all, so the act of rape was not true, and it was an accusation he would deny. But no matter what, the French people only know two categories: heroes and traitors. Jacques inevitably has to deny the accusation for the sake of their honor, and is ready to have a judicial duel with Carouge. Entering Chapter 3, where the truth of the events from Marguerite's statement. Before the wedding, it appears that Carouge protested his dowry, where he did not get the castle because it had been taken by Pierre. But one thing that Robert promised, if his daughter, Marguerite, would give him the offspring he had been craving all this time. Then, during the birth of Crespin's child, after Marguerite met Jacques for the first time, she was mesmerized by Jacques' good looks and handsomeness. Even when she chatted with other noble wives, the other noble wives talked about Jacques' good looks. Marguerite said that Jacques was indeed handsome, but her husband did not trust Jacques. When the Carouge left for the war in Scotland, Marguerite was in charge of their estates and farms. In addition, she also went to check on her condition with the local doctor to see if she was pregnant or not. But after the doctor examined her, it turned out that Marguerite had some bad conditions, where she suffered from unstable bile that made Marguerite look withered. The doctor then asked her about her relationship with her husband, whether Marguerite enjoyed every intimate relationship she had with her husband or not. Because if Marguerite didn't reach the peak in intercourse, then she wouldn't be able to get pregnant. Upon Carouge's return from the war, Marguerite greeted him in a slightly sexier outfit. Because of her actions, Carouge made a face and did not touch her at all. Once inside the house, Carouge scolded Marguerite for dressing sexily in public. Actually, Marguerite's actions were nothing but wanting to add to her husband's intimacy, and wanted to arouse his passion for relationships. But Carouge only thinks that women who dress like that are like lowly prostitutes. While at dinner, Carouge will leave the next day for Paris to collect wages. Marguerite asks to be allowed to leave the house and meet her friends, but Carouge forbids it, because it is very dangerous if he is not at home. Carouge's actions indirectly make his wife depressed and feel isolated. The next morning, after Carouge's departure, it seems that the mother also went to take care of other business and left Marguerite alone in the castle without any servants. And then Marguerite was visited by Jacques. After the agreement of the officials in a church that they would file a lawsuit against Jacques. It seems that Marguerite's friends feel unhappy, even though Marguerite has previously acknowledged Jacques' good looks, and surely if Jacques had sex with her, she would feel excited. Not only that, when Marguerite was alone, Carouge's mother came and protested Marguerite's actions. Because of Marguerite's actions, her husband could have been killed. Carouge's mother also admitted that when she was young she had been raped, but she thought not to reveal the case because it would only result in her husband being involved in a case that could have taken his life, just like the current case of Carouge, who risked his life for the sake of his wife's dignity. But Marguerite refused, and considered that her dignity must still be fought, even if her life was also threatened. At the trial, which was attended by French law officials and King Charles VI, it appeared that Marguerite was pregnant and almost exactly at the time of the rape. Marguerite was asked sensitive questions about her private relationship with her husband. Marguerite's passion had to be questioned as, in the 5 years she and Carouge had been married, Marguerite had never conceived. The council had suggested that Marguerite's current pregnancy was because she enjoyed being sexually assaulted by Jacques, but Marguerite strongly denied this, because after she was raped by Jacques, she and her husband also had intercourse, which is suspected to be the cause of the pregnancy. With a very complex case between the two parties without any real evidence, the king and the French legal council immediately agreed to the plaintiff's request, which was to conduct a judicial duel, which has been prohibited by French law for decades. Here, the rightness or wrongness of a person will be determined by God through who will win the fight, and if it turns out that Carouge loses, then Marguerite, as a wife, will be considered spreading slander and receive a sentence to be burned alive in front of the public. And in 1368, the nobles and thousands of French people, the judicial duel between Carouge and Jacques took place. After a very fierce fight, Carouge finally won the fight. Jacques, who had died, his body was hanged as a sign that he was a brutal criminal for raping a nobleman's wife, while Carouge and his wife suddenly became popular. A few years later, Carouge's son had grown up well, while Carouge himself had died in the crusade in Jerusalem, and Marguerite herself never married again during her lifetime, and the movie ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.